What's up, party people? It's Keys Dan with RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com, coming to you live in a living color from the Radio What studios. And this is my podcast, What Makes You Famous. It's an extension of the RadioWhat.com internet radio station that I've been running for quite some time. And if you need DJ services, where do you go? DJLittleRock.com. Check availability and get a free price quote, and maybe you can have me, at your next event. I like to party with the people. Make your next thing a big one. I've been booking a lot of weddings coming up. Oh my goodness. At the end of the year and even throughout next year. Oh, I'm so stoked. In addition to that, I'm doing the regular shows weekly. I love it. Today on the program, I have Dar.Ra of Kusha Deep Music. Who that? Well, you better know who that is. If you've been listening to this podcast, you'll know I did a full podcast with him just last year, and we're just going to catch up and find out what's going on in Dar.Ra's life. Yeah, so stick around for that. This week's shows, well, as I'm recording this on Saturday, last night I had a video dance party karaoke jam at the Rab in Conway, Arkansas. And guess what? Next Friday night, I plan to do the same. It's been going so well. As we come in, we wear our masks. We're taking care of each other. Wear the mask on the way in. Use the hand sanitizer. As you're walking around, wear the mask. But when you're sitting down, have your drinks, have your food. You can pull the mask down. Okay. It's just when we're walking around interacting with each other. Yeah. Full bar, kitchen's open, pool tournament on Friday night. So there's always something good to do while you're waiting to sing on stage. Video dance party, karaoke jam. You're the stars of the show. All right. Speaking of stars of the show, let's get into it with Dar from Kusha Deep Music. Now, I did take some video. I got him on Skype. So if you're listening to the audio version of this, you can go over my YouTube, youtube.com, and then look up radiowhat.com, and it'll pop up right there. And you'll see him right on that feed. You'll find the video version, and you can see Dar.Ra right next to me on the screen. Yeah, that'll be so exciting for you. You get to see his pretty face and hear his lovely voice and hear the stories he has to tell. All right, let's get into it with Dar.Ra of Kusha Deep Music, Skyping Dar.Ra now.
I've had some right old technical issues with my Mac like this, which has really thrown me right out. I bought this Mac basically for obviously doing interviews and bits of office stuff as well, and it's literally just as that tour started, it bloody went down like hardcore, like a super fortress, mate, over the English Channel. Yeah, so I've kind of been relying on the phone thing and obviously touch and go. So it's been a bit of a drag, really. But hey ho, we're still broadcasting, which is cool.
Yeah, Dar.Ra. No, people that get the Mac, they live and die by the Mac. And I guess, are you a Mac man, or do you have some PCs as well?
No, I've never really been a PC fan. I've always been a Mac boy. Do you know what I mean? I mean, the studio's Macs. Whenever I think I got kind of put off PCs in the 90s, but working in recording studios and just having that blue screen thing happen after working on something for like 12 hours or something, and then suddenly it's like the engineer says, I've got bad news, and it's like, what? And it just crashed, and it's all over, and I'd be just like, you got to be joking me. So when the Mac kind of thing kicked in and the whole Logic thing happened, it was just like, yes, now we're working. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I've never really been a fan of them. I find the operating system's a little bit weird to work with. It's just a very slow, laborious way of kind of working. Mac OS kind of systems just really suit just quick finding things, knowing where everything is. Man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess the last time I worked on any kind of an Apple was the Apple Lisa back in the 80s when I was in high school. When first learning computers, and I haven't really been on them since. I use an MSI gaming computer, which has enough speed for me to do all the broadcasting and the different things that I need to do. I don't produce music like you do, Dar.Ra.
Yeah.
And I know, there's different ways to pronounce your name, but you pronounce your name for people.
Oh, so it's Dar.Ra, but it's Dar.Ra. But I've grown up with kind of different people calling me different sort of variations, so I don't really mind, really. It's just, Dar.Ra. I mean, the thing is about the abbreviation there is like, England, particularly people in England, they struggle if your name's not kind of John or Pete, they really struggle kind of like to get their head around anything kind of slightly different. So I try and make it. I made it easier by putting the dot there that they might go Dar.Ra, because they'd be, you know, they were all my life they'd be called Dar.Ra, or you know, drag, or whatever, or da do. And so yeah, just try to make it slightly easier for people to sort of get their head around. You know what I mean? But it probably made it even more difficult. But the full Irish spelling you see is Darragh.
Yeah, I was going to mention that.
Could you imagine that on a record? That would just be like, rah! They'd be like all over the place trying to understand it. So I try and make things slightly. I try and make the music relatively complicated, but the delivery relatively easy. You know what I'm saying? So that's the story there. But how's things been going? Because last time we spoke, I was getting attacked by two nurses.
That's what I was going to mention. You know, let me just put a button on the name thing. As people learning English, that AUGH is so difficult. It can be read as what, two or three different ways, right? So
yeah,
that's why
it's the A-G, so it's Darragh is the Irish spelling. But then Irish names are kind of, you know, they've got that kind of Celtic, I don't know, sing along kind of mythological thing that goes along with them. So there's always sort of something slightly interesting, and always a kind of very cool meaning alongside those names. Do you know what I mean? So yeah,
for sure.
So I was very lucky. My mum gave me a cool name that made me sort of slightly different to everybody else. But I like different.
It is cool, like Dar.Ra, and putting that little decimal point, the point in the middle, it kind of affects every time I hit your song on Twitter. It wants to make Dar.Ra into a URL.
All right.
Yeah, so it's trying to find Dar.Ra. So what you need to do is find somebody that can sell you that as a URL and make that your URL. That should be your website for sure.
Yeah, well, that wouldn't be hard, you know what I mean? And it's certainly something, because I've been hiding under Kusha, my record label, so I haven't really done the Dar.Ra website things, but I should really do it, because obviously, you know, when I get my chart metric stuff come through, and it's like how many people have looked at Wikipedia, or how many people have like searched you on this, that, and the other, and so it'd probably be worth it, because obviously people are kind of searching sort of databases for information, probably the tax office.
Well, all right, Dar.Ra. I mean, this is
the IRS.
This is the second time I'm talking to you, but this is the first time that I'm getting you on video. So I'll be putting this out as an audio podcast and a video podcast, so that way people can see your lovely face as well as hear your lovely voice. Dar.Ra, you're an Irish man living in London now.
So I'm sort of south of London, about half an hour south of London. Kind of, we bailed from the big smog, and we're sort of living in the country, surrounded by farms, and a few mad old kind of eccentric people who wear funny hats and drive around on tractors. And at sort of late in the day, my next door neighbour is so insane. He's got a fishing hat on. Last night about 10 o'clock, he has a fishing hat, and he's driving his tractor around his garden. And it's kind of trippy, it's kind of insane, but you know what I mean? But hey ho, then I'm in my studio kind of cranking out big fat mixes at sort of 3 a.m. So it's, you know, we get each other back, you know what I mean?
But are you wearing headphones? I'm by what you're saying, the context, you're not wearing headphones on this one.
No, I'm not. I can hear you okay, man.
I'm saying while you're making music at 3 a.m., you're not wearing headphones.
Oh yeah, no, I do have cans on, sort of, yeah, because my girlfriend would sort of have words otherwise. You know what I mean? She likes her sleep. I think women, they get really angry when they don't get their sleep. You know what I mean? Like I did stumble into bed about 3 o'clock in the morning, and she wasn't pleased. She was like, "I can't believe you keep doing this to me. Always staying up. I can't take it. You're gonna have to move out."
Dar.Ra, I'm sure that's a spot on impression of the girlfriend, and I hope she listens to this and appreciates how much time and effort you put into that impression of her. All right.
She's long suffering, mate. She's got kind of used to it. I sort of go, I'm so, you do that classic. Oh, I'm really sorry. It won't happen again. And she's like, yeah, of course it won't. It never happens again, does it? You know what I mean? And you're sort of like, that's the only thing I can say is like, I'm really sorry. I promise it won't happen again. But I know it's a complete and utter lie because it's just one of them things. You know what I mean? But that's the deal when you're hanging out with a musician. You can't be. I don't know. You can't be sort of like too straight about things when you're hanging out with art people who create art because we are different kind of character. We're wired up slightly different. We don't work at the regular hours that most people do. We keep late hours. We're always kind of looking for inspiration in strange places. So it kind of makes us not the kind of the run of the mill kind of thinking. You know what I'm saying? We kind of it makes things interesting, but if you're not up for the adventure, it's going to be very difficult. And I've been through quite a few relationships where women, or women, women don't sort of some women that is might not quite get it. And it sort of leaves them scratching their heads and going, I arranged to meet him at 9 o'clock and he's still not here. You know what I mean? You're
No.
sort of like, I've just got to get this mix out. You know what I mean? But so yeah, it's kind of one of them things that it's an up and down life. Being in any creative game, and I think that if you're hanging out again with people who are sort of very kind of like they go to work at 9 o'clock and they come home at 5, it's difficult. It's difficult for them to understand because they think that's how work is divided up between those hours. Whereas like for anyone working in a creative department, work sort of starts when you open your eyes and finishes when you close your eyes. You know what I'm saying? There's never really an off button. That's the problem with the game. Is like there's never an off button. Like I could get a call at 4 a.m. from a DJ somewhere in the world who wants to do an interview, and you either got to want to do the job or you don't. You know what I'm saying? And or journalists phoning you up or whatever at late hours because they want to do an interview. And as I say, if you don't want to play the game, then you shouldn't really be in it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, Dar.Ra.
So
BB King said the life of a musician. You'd go to work at 9 p.m. So you do work a 9 to 5. It's just the opposite 9 to 5. And I guess it is hard on a relationship. You got to find that right person that's going to put up with that. They know that you have creative flow and it happens anytime. You never know when it's going to strike you. You have to have that inspiration. And I'm sure that these little tiffs, these little, you have the guy on the lawnmower or the tractor next door with his fishing hat. He's going to give you some inspiration. The girlfriend that's a little miffed that you came in at 3 a.m. She's going to give you some inspiration, and you're going to put it to song. You're going to put it out there for the rest of the world to hear.
I think my next door neighbor would give me target practice if I was allowed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But God bless him. I hope he finishes building that extension. And yeah. So you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Extension to his brain. Yeah. So I'll just. It is what it is, man. Do you know what I mean? And that's what makes it interesting. And I think I get bored easy. Like I probably said that in the last time we had an hour, but I think music and sort of creative kind of things, there's always something new to try and sort of do or work out, or so it keeps you kind of interested and looking for like how can I do that slightly differently, or what can I like for instance like the Rise Like the Sun track. I've been so bang into that record, you know what I mean, making that record, and we've got a really cool guy out in Eastern Europe actually who's going to do the actual EQ kind of mix for me. So, that's kind of interesting because I'm batting tracks to him, and getting that mix ready, and then I've got the A side out to him, and then I'm doing the remix, then I'm doing a second remix. Do you know what I mean? And then I've got to get to that point where I'm going right. That's enough. Is that I don't want to do anymore because I think that you can only give so much to it, and then I've got to farm it out to other people. So I've got like a cat in India who's going to do a remix called Vidula. He's done 2 mixes for me already. One on the lights, which was just banging, and he did the remix of the beat, the Bangra mix as well. So he's just waiting for the track to go out to him, and he's going to start doing a sort of I don't know, some sort of Indian house rock thing. I'll give him some weird brief, and he'll probably come up with something really weird. And then I've got a cat in Spain who's going to do a sort of classic Latin house pumping remix. of it, and so we'll have a few mixes of it, and then that'll be ready. But so already, sort of like from just like I came back in this morning, like I'd been working free on one of the mixes, and then I came back in and thought I really need to do a dub mix of that. So I was in from sort of 11 this morning, sort of in the studio, sort of, and I've just finished about an hour ago getting that all done. So that's sort of my two remixes are done. So as soon as I'm done, like I sit down, I'm having a chat with you, and then I'm thinking, right, what am I going to do now? Like, am I, because I've got a few songs on the go, so should I? I'll be thinking about maybe trying to get some movement happening on those, or I'll be rehearsing for the next track to record. You know what I mean? So there's always something going on. There's always something to do. There's never a moment where I'm thinking, oh, what am I going to do now? Because there's just loads of stuff. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I've got stuff from like the 90s that I haven't even recorded. So I'd like to maybe do a retrospective of all the songs that I recorded or haven't recorded rather, and do an acoustic album of that. Do you know what I'm saying? So there's loads and loads and loads of things to be doing. If I'm not doing that, then I'm thinking about should I write another book, or you know what I mean? Like there isn't really much time to sort of to be thinking, you know, about what should I do next, because there's always something to do. And I think that that's probably why people who sort of maybe do, you know, they like to clock in and clock out, you know, that they have those that a lot of time, some, you know, to kind of, I don't know, sit down and maybe waste. There's like, I think if there was more hours on the clock, it would be handy,
Well,
because there's never enough hours in the day.
there's
I
two
mean, you're the
schools.
same kid. Man, I see you working solid. You know, you're another sort of worker. You're like me. You're like a workaholic. You know, you don't stop. I see you grooving all the time, man.
Yeah, but there's two schools of thought. You need to set yourself some hours. That way you can have some family time, some time with the girlfriend. But you know, you're talking about inspiration coming at all hours of the night. Yeah, I'm up in the middle of the night. I got home from a gig last night at 3 a.m. And then to try to wind down from a gig, you're like, oh man, do you go to straight to bed? Do people come home from a 9 to 5, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and go home and go straight to bed? No, you're up. And
Yeah,
you're finding something else to kind of unwind, either you
that's
know
right.
looking at a book or looking at some notes that you made or looking
Yeah,
at some tracks that you may have had unfinished. You know, after a gig, you want to wind down a little bit. So it might be the
exactly.
sunshine, might the sun might be coming up, and you're saying, "Wow, I think I need to get some sleep." But you know,
Yeah,
last time we talked, and I know you touched upon it a little bit, we didn't have video. I wish we had video. What was the setting of that?
that was a mad
Yeah,
interview as
you were
well.
getting poked by
I
nurses.
was,
Were you in a
I was.
hospital? I never could quite figure that out.
No, so I did a workshop for a dementia care home not far from where I live, and I used to go down on a Thursday before the whole COVID thing, and do an hour's kind of, you know, I just do a couple of hours basically, just working with them, getting sort of playing some old rock and roll for people, getting the old cognitive thing kind of, you know, stimulated, and chatting, and just generally just going in there and just, you know, kind of cheering people up on a Thursday afternoon. But that particular vibe, it just coincided with us doing an interview. So I asked the manager of the home. I said, "Is it all right if I do this interview?" And she was like, "Yeah, of course." And then they decided three of them decided to come out and attack me and start taking my blood for some weird reason. I don't know what, like. I don't know. Maybe they thought I was a vampire. I didn't have any blood. I don't know. So I don't know. But it was weird. And I was like, so I was halfway talking to you, getting stabbed with needles. Like, you know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, I'm in the safety of my own home today, but
Yeah.
no, it's a cool gig, you know, and it's a shame I haven't been down there now for 6 months because of the whole COVID kind of thing, and it's a real shame because there's a few cats in there I really missed that I kind of had good relationships with, and you know, some again really interesting. I've met some really interesting people there, you know, that these stories of these people's lives, you know what I'm saying, that if you just dig, you kind of find some absolute gold. You know what I mean? Like I've met RAF pilots who were, you know, fighting against the Germans. Do you know what I'm saying? I met guys that are at Normandy landings. Do you know what I'm saying? It was like there was an engineer for the Remies down there, man, who like saw Eisenhower and all that. You know, it's like this is just like, and it's very, it's sad because a lot of those cats now have gone. I've been doing it for 2 years, and in 2 years, a lot of those dudes have gone, and so it's, you know, it's such an honor, you know, for me to actually meet people like that that have had these amazing experiences. And I do this thing, for instance, where I'd go, okay, so I'm going to play you, I don't know, I'll play you Elvis, an Elvis track, Blue Moon of Kentucky or something, and I'll say to them, okay, so can anyone remember where they were when they first heard Blue Moon of Kentucky? Do you know what I mean? And you just get all these amazing stories. Do you know what I mean? One lady, actually, it was a track. I remember playing Delilah, which is by Tom Jones. I don't know if you know Tom Jones is, but
Come
he's an amazing
on.
singer. He was,
He's
yeah,
a
he was an
Welshman,
amazing
a
guy.
great Welshman.
He was huge, man. Huge vocalist. I mean, he was one of Elvis's best buddies, wasn't he? Anyway, so I was playing Delilah, and I'd said this to this the crew, and I said, does anyone remember where they first were when they had Delilah? And this lady sort of says, "Oh, I was driving from Rome to Monte Cassino with my husband. This is like, going back to sort of 64, 65, and we were retracing the route because my husband had fought against the Germans at the Battle of Monte Cassino, which was like a monster battle, and he'd met Sergeant Bilko was on. Like Sergeant Bilko was on the bill with Frank Sinatra, I think, something like that. Do you know what I mean? And who at the time, I think when they'd had some R&R break, do you know what I mean? They'd been to see a show for American soldiers, and there was like Sergeant Bilko was doing like a stand up thing. Do you know what I mean? This is like during the sort of, let's say 1944 or whatever. So Bilko was like around, like what he would have been sort of young lad then at that point. Do you know what I mean? But he'd had a monster career. But here I'm getting, like, from one little question, I'm getting this whole amazing kind of story from this woman about this experience. Do you know what I mean? And it turned out she'd lived in Harlem as well. She was like, she's an English girl, and her husband, he started working for an American company, and they were living not far from Harlem. So they were going to the Apollo and seeing like Nat King Cole. So here I'll be doing I don't know, some Nat King Cole tune, Answer Me, or something like that, or I don't know, Straighten Up and Fly Right, or one of them tracks. And that, she would say, "Oh, well, I remember seeing that King Cole at the Apollo." You know what I mean? And it'd be like, "Oh my God," do you know what I mean? Like, so it just takes a story. Do you know what I'm saying? Or a nugget to get a story, and particularly with people, older people as well, have just had such an amazing, history and experiences. And I think that you ignore the older generation at your peril, because there's always so much to learn. You know what I mean? And that generation were golden, and they really, they were sort of a real, I don't know, just mavericks. You know what I'm saying? Nothing like, for instance, my girlfriend's dad, like, kid during the Second World War, was evacuated from London. The stories he'll tell about seeing the Luftwaffe coming over, and hiding from the bombers and this, that, and the other. And it's, and the food shortages and all the things that they'd gone through, where they, he said, oh, they were so hungry they were eating the tarmac off the roads. Do you know
Yeah,
what I mean?
Darragh, it's one thing to see a documentary, but to hear it straight from people that were there, that's the people that need to be recorded. When I do
Exactly.
these interviews, everyone has a story.
Of
Everyone
course they
has
do. Of course they
experiences
do.
from one standpoint to another. But you're getting to talk to these people that were there in several wars and gone through
Yeah, yeah.
famine and depression and so many different hardships, but came through. And that,
That's right.
the next great generation, it's been said by economists that the next great generation might be this one, because they're
Mm,
starting off the same way 100 years
mm.
ago, where they started
Yeah,
off with war and pandemic and violence and protest, and it's
yeah.
all coming around. So that's going to
That's right.
inspire the next generation of music and films and books, all the things that you're interested in. So
Absolutely.
what inspiration are you getting from the people that are talking to you about, their time in the war, their time in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, all that inspiration? Is it going into the Kusha Deep songs?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I'm always kind of noting stuff. Do you know what I'm saying? And so yeah, those sort of stories will find their way into various kind of outlets. And I did write a book called Road Tales, which actually was about people that I'd met on the road. who'd all had really incredible stories. People out in Australia, Aboriginal guys out in Australia, to cats down in Guatemala who were freedom fighting and sort of trying to get their land rights back for their people. Do you know what I mean? So I've met many interesting people, and certainly those stories are they were all gold, and I just felt that it was really important to try and write them down and let people know that these cats have got. Everyone's, like you've just said, everyone's got a jewel. You know what I mean? That's my girlfriend coming back. Everyone's got a jewel.
Yay, she came back.
She did. I was looking at the clock there, thinking, So yeah, with the road tales, it was all basically about little kind of things that human beings do that we sort of kind of take for granted. You know what I mean? And little archetypes. So each chapter is really just focusing in on a human archetype. And I talk about faith. And what is faith? When you have faith, how does that make miracles kind of happen? Do you know what I'm saying? And the faith story really was about this Aboriginal dude who I've met, who's part of the stolen generation, and they'd basically been taken away from their families, and they had been brought up on Christian reservations, which had given them a kind of a mixture between this kind of Christianity and also their own indigenous kind of like ways of and belief systems. Do you know what I'm saying? So anyway, I was talking to him really, and he was just telling me this story about he used to play mandolin in a church, and one day he also worked in a sheet metal factory. Now, one day he was cutting sheet metal, and a piece of metal came down and cut his hand clean off. And they managed to kind of freeze it, and he got back into the hospital and they stitched it, but they said this will never work again. It'll just be a kind of a kind of physicality that will allow you to kind of get on, but you won't be able to play again. So he just said that he had faith. He had faith, and he used the power of prayer and the power of faith. And he said within 18 months, he was picking his mandolin up every day and just trying to get movement. And whether it was a small nugget of movement, but he said within 18 months, he was playing again.
What?
So I don't know, I'm not coming out and saying anything other than when people have faith in something and they use the power of prayer and intention, miracles happen. So I just thought, this guy's given me this story, and I couldn't not write it down because it was so important. And I think it might be the opening chapter. It's in there anyway. And yeah, so it's just with these stories. The guy in Guatemala, for instance, who's just, what is altruism? He sort of gave me this story about when people step out of their own nuclear family, for instance, and they work for the greater good of the community to the possible detriment of their life. What pushes someone to do that? Because it's very easy for us to go, well, I'm not going to say that, I'm not going to do that because I might jeopardize myself and my family. But some people go, that's a risk, and I'm going to take that risk because I've got to kind of support the greater kind of my greater family which is the community. And some people do it and some people don't. And I'm asking, what is that thing that drives a person to do that? So he's in the book. Everyone's got a pseudonym as well. So he's called Don Juan. I protected people basically from sort of like, revealing their names, blah, blah, blah. But, there's, as I say, there's many different sort of, many different little archetypes in there. But, there's one about, I did a film. There's a chapter called The Krishna Beetle.
Mm-hmm.
And so we basically were making this film for Indian television, and it was about when the Beatles got into the whole spirituality trip.
Uh-huh.
And so I went for this audition because at the time I was kind of like, I was looking at getting into writing scripts, and I wanted to sort of suss out a little bit more about how films work. So I was doing a bit of acting. I was doing some stuff for the BBC, and I went for an audition for this film. And the guy that was doing the kind of the screencast was a guy called Shumashunda, and he was an American cat from San Francisco, who'd obviously changed his name like down the line, but he was really good mates with Rock Scully. Rock Scully being the Grateful Dead's manager. Now, he said to me, man, he goes, you are the, when I did this screen test, he goes, man, you're the spit of Rock Scully. You've got to play Rock Scully, man. So, because they were all connected, you know what I'm saying? And he knew George. He was really good friends with George Harrison, this dude as well. Good friends with Rock Scully and George. So anyway, so he said, look, we're going to start filming, and they were redoing. George basically went in the studio with a load of Krishna dudes and recorded this Hare Krishna thing, which became a massive track. Do you know what I mean? So anyway, we were doing this. We did this little prelim kind of shot, and Paul McCartney, the guy that they'd actually cast for Paul McCartney, didn't turn up for some unknown reason. So I'm sort of sitting on set, and I've gone, well, I'll do it, man. Do you know what I mean? Because like a lot of people over the years have said, hey, you look a little bit like Paul. You know, you guys sing and dance, but you must have a home someplace, don't you? So I try to practice Miss Scouse accent, and so I was talking to Shumashunda, and he goes, look, do it, we'll do it. So they sort of scrubbed the Rock Scully thing, and I ended up playing Paul McCartney in this movie. Anyway, long story short, I'm sitting on set with like these like John, this cat that looks like John, the dude that looks like George, who is actually a Krishna, and Ringo, and I'm doing Paul, and we're sort of recreating this moment when they met Shamashunda, and they were like Shamashunda was talking about Krishna and the Maharishi and all that lot, and really turning them on. And then we recreated the scene in Abbey Road in another studio of when they got in the studio and they're doing the whole Hare Krishna thing. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I kind of the Krishna Beatle is really about the guy that played George in the book, and it's really just about stepping out sometimes and really he wanted to actually act more, but was torn between being involved with the Krishna kind of thing and also sort of having ambition. And so I was really sort of questioning that, at what point do you break out and do your thing? Do you know what I'm saying? Because I've never, if you said to me, come on, we're going to go and, I don't know, go and tour South America tomorrow, I'm going to go, that sounds like a pretty mad idea. Let's do it.
Let's go.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So let's do it. So, but for him, he was caught because he couldn't just get out and do more stuff like that. So, again, I just thought it's an interesting story about that. Was an interesting story, particularly being on set and recreating that moment again. Sort of, the Beatles for me was sort of like, the greatest one of the greatest rock and roll bands of all time. So to actually, play Paul McCartney and do all that sort of thing, I thought it was really, it was just an amazing experience. You know what I mean? And so yeah, that's in the book as well. Krishna Beatle. There's lots of different things in there. All literally moving. Like there's people that I met who could, could speak to animals and find out where animals were at. Do you know what I mean? And I'm like, what is that about?
Dar.Ra,
Do you know what I'm
I would say
saying?
that you were living a charmed life, but you go out and you get these experiences. You go for adventures. You kind of fell into playing a Beatle. That's amazing.
Dude.
All right, I know you've alluded to it a little bit, but give me your best Liverpool accent as a Beatle.
Oh yeah. Oh, so we've got this new album coming out, and it's a great record. We made it in 2 minutes because that's the way we work. We're really fast at making records. So and John was there, of course, and he turned up for a cup of tea, and Ringo turned up, and it was all grand, and the record's out in a couple of weeks. So go out and buy it.
Or you could change the story and say, "Oh, the record's been out for a day. It's already gone platinum. No problem."
Yeah. Oh, we put out the record like yesterday, and it's gone double platinum already. Do you know what I mean? So, I just love those boys so much. I really do. They. Funny enough, just before I came on to talk to you, I was looking at oh my God, there's an amazing McCartney documentary out that's actually on YouTube. It literally is the coolest thing. I've got to send you the link. It should be on Netflix. It's the deepest. It goes from the '69 when they just started breaking up, and it gets into when he started recording Ram. And if I'm honest with you, I wanted to play Lennon. I was always really more of a Lennon fan. Like most people, if we ever were kids and we were going, all right, we're going to pretend we're the Beatles, you know what I mean? I'd be like, right, I'm John, and you'd fight over being John Lennon, do you know what I mean? But
Nah, but you're the
I've always
pretty
been,
one. You're the pretty one. You look a little more Paul. Yeah.
I know, and that's what would drive me mad because no, you look like Paul. You're going to be Paul. Oh no, I want to be John. But anyway, I watching that documentary, which I was doing literally in my breaks this week, just made me realise what an amazing individual Paul McCartney actually is. And sure, we've had some greats. Of course, we've had greats, but that guy is just insane. Just how talented he is, and the catalog that he created is just.
Yeah.
I mean, it's mind-boggling. It's absolutely. He's had over 200 records in the charts for a start.
Could you imagine? He's
I
had.
mean, it's incredible. And just look back on his career from sort of like the first track he put out, "Love Me Do," to Egypt Station, which was a number one for him sort of a couple of maybe late last year. It's just it really inspired me because I thought, what, he's a man, and I kind of related to it as well because when I saw that documentary, it made me sort of see that actually really towards the sort of from about 1966 onwards, Paul really is the driving force. He really is. He's the guy that's phoning them up saying, "Come on, lads, we've got to go and make another record." John Paul and John Ringo and George are sitting sort of in their garden chilling, going, "Oh God, we've got to go to the studio. Paul wants to make a record." And I think that's what drove them all a bit bonkers. Is he's just got this drive, and I understand it. I really do get it because, like I just opened up the conversation with you, there's always something to do, or always something to create, or always something. And I think that's where Paul McCartney is. He is that guy. He's that guy that's constantly going, what can I do next? And he's either working with Dave Grohl or he's working with kind of Kasabian or some new upcoming rock band or whatever. Do you know what I mean? And I think if there was a roadmap that you could follow for a career, God, his would just be the most ideal career ever because just the songs. I mean, look back at 20s. Look at Eleanor Rigby, for instance. I mean, at 21, he's writing Eleanor Rigby. I mean, it's just it's ridiculous. At 20, he's writing Yesterday. I mean, it's like you could just just insane. So yeah, I mean, my respect for sort of Paul McCartney is just since I watched that documentary and seeing some of the things that were revealed, some of the difficulties he went through as well in terms of sort of. I think John came out looking the tough guy, and Paul basically, due to various different things, got the rough end of the review stick and became sort of he wasn't as hard as John or political as John, but actually down in the scenes he has been very political and he has been very kind of like moving forward. I mean, I was saying to somebody the other day, I was a vegetarian sort of like from a very early age, and Paul and Linda were like the big inspirations, you know what I mean? Because they were the ones that were sort of going, give up eating meat. It ain't good for you. Do you know what I'm saying? And from a sort of age of 16, 17, sort of like, the only sort of vegetarian food you could get in the 90s was made by Linda McCartney, and so, God bless her, you know what I'm saying? I remember coming to America and sort of saying, well, no, I think I came to America in 2000 first time and said I was a vegetarian. People were like, what? You don't eat meat? What are you, a communist?
No, I mean, you can imagine, being that prolific, Paul McCartney. It's got to be hard on a relationship. You alluded to it earlier, but he found his Linda McCartney. I mean,
she was amazing.
My goodness, yeah, what a relationship that they had. And not only did she put up with him, but she added to him. She helped him to create.
She did.
I hope that I know that you are very prolific. You've already alluded that you have many different avenues. Writing books, doing films, making music. First of all, I guess right now, but while we're thinking about the book, tell the people how to get the book, and then we can move on.
Sure. So if you just go to Amazon and search Dar.Ra, but it's my full name, Darragh, Darragh. J. Brady, Brady, Road Tales, and then there's another book out called The Night That Jimmy Died as well, which is based on a friend of mine who was born in the same hospital on the same night as when Jimi Hendrix died, in a hospital in London called it's the Knightsbridge Infirmary, and I just had this idea of like, what if their souls kind of crossed over, and she sort of becomes this amazing maverick guitar player that sort of saves humanity from destruction, and so she's got this way of channeling the energy and the spirit of Jimi Hendrix through her music, and Jimmy kind of shows her a way of altering DNA using frequencies that she perfects on her Fender Stratocaster. Do you know what I mean?
Just the name of your record company, Kusha Deep, it alludes to that you're very spiritual, that you find a lot of inspiration from the supernatural. I don't even know what some people would. I guess I would call it supernatural, or so, the faith based. You have that inspiration. How is that? I mean, how is that affecting you, your music these days?
Well, do you know what? It's weird because I remember sort of being like, I think the bit again, you coming back to the Beatles being a cornerstone of kind of everything that I've kind of got into. I think because I was a knocked out fan. I used to do a paper round when I was about 7 or 8 years old. You know what I mean? And in the paper shops you used to go to, do you know what I mean? They used to have little 45s, man. Do you know what I mean, on the counter? And
Grandpa,
I
what's
used
a
to flick,
45?
huh?
Grandpa, what's a 45?
You know what I mean?
No, you got to tell the
It's not a
kids.
gun.
The
It's
kids
not a
that are
gun.
listening. No, the kids that are listening. What's a 45?
All right, so it's a little bit of vinyl. It's a little vinyl kind of, it's a vinyl single basically. We used to. That's how we got our music back in the day when we were kids. And so every day when I used to go in get my papers to do my paper round, I'd be flicking through the 45s, and the first time I did it, "She Loves You" came out, and I'd never really, I never really heard of the Beatles because they were done and dusted well before then. Do you know what I'm saying? So. But I pulled this record out, "She Loves You," and I remember taking it home, not really, vaguely kind of hearing about it. You know what I mean? The Beatles, blah blah blah. And I put this record on, and I was just hooked ever from that. And I wanted to find out more about them, and sort of went out and bought books on them and stuff, and albums, and just from about the age of 8, I was just a knocked out fan. So everything I think that I do has always been a result of what John, Paul, George, and Ringo kind of did, and because they opened lots of doors. I think they were really kind of like, they were trailblazers, not just in music but in spirituality. So there was a book later on down the road. There was a book that John Lennon had read. Sorry, he'd read this book because Timothy Leary had turned him on to this book called The Tibetan Book of the Dead. So he wrote, if you know Tomorrow Never Knows on the Revolver album, that basically that's the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Basically, turn off your mind, relax, float downstream is literally a line straight out of the Tibetan Book of the Dead. So anyway, long story short, I'm 17 years old and I'm doing my car up outside my mum's house. And this dude comes up with long hair and he's really cool, and we got chatting, and he had a place further down the road, and he was doing a car up, and we got talking. He was a bit older than me. I was still 30 something. Do you know what I mean? I was out of the blue because we were talking, and I said, "Oh, do you know anything about Tibetans and stuff? You know what I mean?" And he went, "Wow, it just so happens I've got a whole bookcase full of stuff on that tip." So he kind of just went and he happened to be a DJ as well. So when I rocked round his place, man, he was just like wall to wall full of 45s and albums and this, that, and the other. So I was like, "Whoa, this dude's something else." Do you know what I mean? And he had a book collection, like a crazy book collection, and he's just handed me the Tibetan Book of the Dead and said, "Go and read that." And I kind of tried to read it and thought, it's interesting. I don't really get it, but I'm just reading it. Do you know what I'm saying? And so from that point onwards, I was always kind of looking at different ideals and different ideologies and different thought processes, and gravitating towards some of the Vedic stuff. Do you know what I mean? That I thought was really interesting. The Indians before 3000 BC just really had it down pat. If you think of yoga, you think of the Kama Sutra, You think of kind of like Ayurvedic medicine. You think of any kind of meditation. It's all from the Vedic kind of scriptures, as it were. Kundalini kind of, yoga, massage. The whole bag literally comes from that whole kind of period of time where they had this whole way of life. And after there was a huge war in sort of 3000 after 3000 BC, the Mahabharata War it was called, and a lot of that knowledge got broken up and smacked into different sort of like fragments. So people don't equate yoga with, I don't know, with Ayurvedic medicine, for instance. Do you know what I mean? Or they don't equate Ayurvedic medicine with the Kama Sutra, or they don't, equate the Kama Sutra with, I don't know, sort of like vegetarian food or whatever, or eating. So they were just well ahead of the game. You know what I'm saying? So once you start going down that route and you start digging, then you start sort of realizing just sort of like, where ancient civilizations, were at, and sort of how advanced they were, and how, sure, we might be technologically advanced, but we're not spiritually advanced as we should be, because like I said, everything's fragmented. So a lot of people that are doing their Pilates class in Los Angeles right now, they're going, come on, girls, twist those guts, whatever, blah, blah. They don't get it. They're sort of doing the movements, but they don't get where that's actually. Pilates is just being pulled out of the whole yogic kind of frame. So, they're just core stomach exercises. So
Yeah,
we're
they're
living in this
glossing the
existence.
surface of these great texts. And
Yeah.
I know I've been trying to read some of these texts, and I tried to read Nietzsche, very difficult. I tried to read Art of War, very
Oh, yeah.
difficult. All of these books that were written so long ago, and
Yeah.
now I have to tear into the book of the dead. And when I say read, I mean audiobooks, trying to listen to them
Yes.
on audio, because I get to listen to a lot of podcasts. But
Yeah, I would. I would
there's
think. I would think if you can get Tibetan Book of the Dead audio, I think that would be a really good way of spending a few days, man.
oh,
Do you know
for
what I mean? Because
sure.
it's
But then
deep. But
you have great insight. You're talking about these people that walk into yoga classes and say namaste, and they think that they're very spiritual, but you have to dig
yeah.
a little deeper. So continue. How have you dug a little deeper?
So I've spent, I remember going, I was out in Australia for a tour in 1996, and I remember sort of being up in a place called Byron Bay, which is like San Francisco of Australia. And somebody said to me, a girlfriend at the time said to me, well, why don't you go and check this yoga class out around the corner? And I was like, yoga, what's that? Again, see, I read the Tibetan Book of the Dead, but they hadn't equated yoga with the Tibetan Book of the Dead, so it was all fragmented for me at one point. Anyway, I went to this yoga class and I did it, and I was like, wow, I was really knocked out by it. The vibe I got and the people were just, wow, really. So that sort of turned me on to sort of like the physical and internal kind of thing, because with the yoga you get the meditation as well. And so, sort of like, for the last 20 odd years or whatever it is, I've been doing yoga every day. It was one of them things that I do, yoga meditation. It's really, really key. So, a lot of things it kind of falls into a lifestyle. Being a vegetarian falls into a lifestyle, being kind of like an activist in terms of sort of like looking after the globe, climate kind of, vibe that we're, totally respecting the earth that we live on. I think that should be first and foremost in any kind of any text that we read, or and so yeah, I've just spent a lot of time reading stuff. Do you know what I'm saying? And I think we were kind of lucky that we lived in a period of time, or we have lived in a time where sort of information, has been sort of available at given points in time through great authors. Do you know what I'm saying? And I mean, again, sort of like the word Kusha Deep came. I was in Bangkok, in Thailand, coming back from Australia, and I happened to the bookshops down in the Koh San Road in Bangkok are phenomenal, are phenomenal. And you can buy any record down there that you want. You can buy anything you want, actually, because it's all kind of like, all kind of, how should we say, bootleg stuff. But the bookshops, man, the bookshops are just incredible. So you can find all sorts of stuff on Tibetan text down there that you wouldn't find in a bookshop in Arkansas. But that's what I'm saying. So it's just been open. So anyway, I bought this book. It was on Vedic civilization, and I was reading through. I was sitting in. It was like a baking hot night. One of those nights where the fan's on, but you're still sweating hard. There's no AC in Thailand, or there is, but not in that particular place I was staying. And I was just reading this book, and this word Kusha came out at me, and I thought, "Oh, that sounds interesting." And it just so happened it was a Sanskrit translation that the Indians were trading with Africa, and they called Africa the land of the long grass. And Kusha translated back into Sanskrit means exactly that. It means the land of the tall grass. And I just thought, well, Africa being, the place of music, the place of kind of rhythm, I just thought it just sounded and sat right. So yeah, it's a Vedic word, but it kind of means kind of, Africa being the kind of the birthplace of humanity and music. So
Yeah.
that's where it sits. But it's all, every day I'm trying to find new, things that I have not come across, or there's a load of books that I've got that still I'm finding my way through. There's some great authors that are old stuff that you can't find. I like people like Alice Bailey, for instance, who was a sort of an esoteric. She wrote a book, The Treaty on White Magic, for instance, which is not like, some people go, oh, it's so cold, or this, that, and the other. But there's just stuff in there that you just think, wow, that's interesting. That's a really interesting point of view. And not that I would like Madame Blavatsky, for instance. You know what I mean? It's another dude that sort of had sort of influenced, like, lots of different people in terms of sort of like how human beings can go from just being a human being to a kind of a super being by just changing their thought processes. Do you know what I'm saying? And you look at, say, I don't know, some of the dudes in the Shaolin temples that can break stuff over their heads. Do you know what I mean? And you just think, wow, that's because they've gone into another realm of kind of the way that they look at things and the way that they process kind of information and the way that they self-talk. And it's just I'm really interested in that from a healing point of view. Really, that I think that you can, if you can feel and think in a certain way, that you can create magic. Coming back to the Aboriginal guy, using faith and prayer and intention, that you can create miracles, and so change can happen as a result of that. So, and I think I'm living testament to that in terms of, you using kind of those processes to get to a point where self. Do you know what I'm saying? Unless wanting to beat myself up because I was, told that I was rubbish when I was a kid. Do you know what I mean? So, we hold on to those hang-ups unless we're brave enough to want to get. And this is where the COVID things really made people have to kind of look in the mirror and go, who is that person staring back at me? And if it's sort of there and you can't be comfortable within yourself, then you've got work to do. Do you get me? So,
Yeah.
it's an ongoing process, and sometimes you get there, some people don't get there. They just don't, because they just don't want to do it. They don't want to look. They'd rather go out and buy a new car than look at their face in the mirror and actually ask themselves who they are. And that's fair enough. That's up to them. If that's the way they want to live their lives, that's up to them, man. Do you know what I'm saying? But for me, I like to just think that you've dug deep enough, and I think there's always a bit more to go. There's always somewhere deeper to go to just come up with new ideas, and new ways, not just technologically to get forward, but actually sort of like within ourselves, that we can start, really, really kind of walking on air almost. You know what I'm saying? I know to a lot of people that would sound quite trippy, but and I mean that sort of like metaphorically, but I love. I think miracles, man. Like if you're not believing in miracles, man, you're not living, man. You got to believe in miracles, dude. You know what I'm saying? Things happen if you believe.
Darragh, you're a man that just in this short time that we're talking, and I'm sure the people that are listening have figured out that you are a man who likes to get input all the time and take in new experiences and find things to look at to generate the who, I mean, your muse, who would be a muse for you, or are you your own muse? Have you ever had somebody that inspired you? The first person that inspired you to do music, or to read books or to make films. There has to be someone that was pushing you along the way. You already said that there was people that were telling you that you're rubbish, you're no good, but you didn't believe those people. Who was that one person that told you, "Hey, you've got something, Darragh. You've got something. Take a hold of it."
You know what? I think it was just me, and I don't mean that to sound sort of like kind of like egotistical, but I think that there was a lot more people saying you were rubbish and you'll never do anything or never go anywhere than there was people basically saying, that you would do it. The only person that I really can say that really never said that was my mum. I lost my dad when I was quite young, when I was about 9, and he was a writer, and I never really got to know him that well because he died, as I say, he was ill from most of my kind of like life, really. Do you know what I mean? Died of cancer. But he was kind of a maverick. He lived hard, played hard, and died early. Do you know what I'm saying? So respect to him. He did his thing, but he did leave. He left behind a really broken-hearted woman. But my mum was just the most beautiful person, and I've said this in a few interviews that she was probably the biggest inspiration for me because she was musical, her family were musical, so there was a piano in the house. You know what I'm saying? She played piano to sort of like to give herself some comfort. You know what I mean? She used to play boogie woogie, like, was amazing sort of left hand boogie woogie that I used to just look at her and just go, how do you do that? And so she'd be my inspiration. She was the one. She bought me a drum kit when I was like 10, let me set it up in the front room, let me play. So the music was there, and I think maybe she was doing that to fill a gap with not having a father at a young age. You know what I'm saying? And then she bought me, she, lent me the money. She was always good like that. She lent me the money when I was about 15, 16 to buy a studio, a small studio, little Tascam, half-inch reel-to-reel, and a 12-track desk. And then I went from there. So, she's the one, man. She's the one that I will look back on always and go, she was my inspiration. And then there's just people that, like we've talked about, McCartney and Lennon and Peck, people that I just think, wow, Allen Ginsberg, Ken Casey, they were big influences at a young age because people would say, I had that, like, I was always hanging out with older dudes, you know what I'm saying, who had kind of been around the block, and they'd be sort of going, oh, have you read kind of one, I don't know, One Flew Over a Cuckoo's Nest, or Demon Box by Ken Casey, or Hunter S. Thompson, the Rum Diaries, you know what I'm saying? So, I was very lucky, you know what I'm saying? Like Tom Wolfe, Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test, all those books really kind of like the counterculture books really kind of were the sort of focal point for any of my creative vibrations. And I think that if you read Road Tales and you read Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test, you can see that I got a lot of inspiration from Tom Wolfe because I love that rambling, rolling kind of diction that kind of like, the banging on the cerebral cortex was rat tap tapping on the side of his head. You know what I mean? That kind of raw, it's got some real rhythm and some real punch to it. And Tom Wolfe, Hunter S. Thompson, Ken Casey, I'd say they were sort of like three of my biggest inspirations for sort of writing and, that sort of side of things. So, inspiration comes from, I get inspired by looking at some of the stuff that you're doing, Keys, you know what I'm saying? So, it comes from everywhere. It's just being open. Someone that, like you're saying about, someone down the road will have a story, and I'll be like, "Whoa, that's pretty mind blowing. I never saw things like that before." And so, I'll try and work it into a story. But the core of it is just trying to create art that can hopefully move people. Do you know what I'm saying? And that they will get. Like the investigations that you do as an artist. Do you know what I mean? And you try and bring that together and create something sort of solid that makes it easier for sort of someone else to go, oh, what's that about? Or they'd read a book and they'd want to find out other things. Just like, finding out that John Lennon was inspired by the Tibetan Book of the Dead with the writing Tomorrow Never Knows. That opened up that doorway. So a few years later, I'm asking that question of like, have you ever heard of this, that, and the other? And people are going, well, it just so happens I've got that book. So, it's artists that actually are willing to reveal their kind of their resources and where they get their inspiration from, that opens up kind of avenues for other people to go, wow, if that was where they got that vibe from, then maybe if I go and have a little look at that, do you know what I mean? I might get some inspiration too. And, so yeah, I owe a lot to that generation who way, way, way before me, do you know what I'm saying? They were the counterculture generation, were really breaking through on so many different grounds. You look at, what Dylan and Ginsberg were doing in a sort of like subterranean homesick blues. And, they really, I mean, the benchmark, I think this benchmark was set so high that I think a lot of us probably looked at it when we ain't never going to get as, I mean, I've always thought, yeah, I'm good for a Sergeant Pepper's at some point, you know what I'm saying? But, whether we ever do that is another thing, because their benchmark was just way, way high. And there's some great music coming out today, no doubt about it. You know what I mean? But I think there was such a an array of kind of individuals that were all kind of locked in the same vibe at the same time. You know, you look at the Byrds, for instance, David Crosby. You look at, you know, I don't know, all the American kind of acts that were cracking. The Turtles, bands like the Turtles, that were on, you know, just great bands. You know what I'm saying? And you know, their influence in English bands. Look at Brian Wilson, of course. You know what I mean? Like influence, Pet Sounds comes out, and you know, Rubber Soul influences Pet Sounds. Pet Sounds influences Sergeant Pepper's, and there's that kind of that cross flow between English and American artists that is creating absolute magic. Do you know what I'm saying? And so I think they were very lucky to have been in that kind of. I think if you were growing up in that period of time, the inspiration that you were getting from that generation were colossal, and they're all in their 70s now, you know, mooching onwards. But what a benchmark and what a legacy they've left behind that, you know, is there for us to dig into and see if we can better it at least. Do you
Oh,
know
the
what I mean?
60s were
Have
an
the
amazing
ambition.
time for music and inspiration and creativity. You know, you've already alluded to at 8 years old, a paper boy meeting this DJ that had all these 45s and this and all these
Yeah,
Tibetan writings. I mean, that had to be a turning point in your life right there
yeah, I
to
think it was.
get a hold of that. And then from
Yeah.
there, you know, where did that take you? Was that
So
the inspiration for
yeah,
what?
yeah, I mean, I've been in bands as well, sort of like because obviously I've gone from being the paper boy to sort of 16 at that point. I was 8 when I was doing the paper round, but I was 16 when I met that dude
Okay.
who turned me on to that book. But I kind of I went from there. I was in bands after that and played, you know, got on the road with a touring band. Met a few kind of interesting dudes on the travels there, and then I moved up to London because I'd grown up in a small seaside town called Brighton on the south coast, which is a lovely little place. Again, it's the San Francisco of the UK. Do you know what I'm saying? It's a very liberal, kind of cool, chilled place. Allowed you to sort of like have ideas and be kind of creative and not be sort of like clay pigeoned out of the sky if you walked out kind of with kind of eyeliner on or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, you could do whatever you wanted to do. But I'd moved up to London about a few years later, after about 19, 20, and met a cat, fun enough, in another music shop, who had a track that he really needed a vocalist on, and he played me this track, which we ended up getting signed to EMI as a result of that. Do you know what I'm saying? And so yeah, from meeting someone in a record shop, we put out a white label record, and we had about 3 or 4 major record labels phoning us up, going, "We want to sign you," and from there we kind of that's how I learned my trade. After that, you know, we had a guy called Jazz Summers who managed a girl called Lisa Stansfield, who was massive over here, sort of like
Yeah.
mid-90s, great soul singer, like Barry White. She did a track with Barry White.
Yeah, I've been around
Just
the world.
amazing. Jazz was incredible. Jazz was like those old school managers. They were a little bit gangster, but they were creative gangsters. You get what I'm saying? They would put you in a studio. They would take a chance. Do you know what I mean? But they would be a little bit. There was a little heaviness with them. Do you know what I'm saying? But we got a call from Jazz Summers, and he owned Big Life Records, and he had. I mean, you know, he had the Verve. I don't know if you remember the Verve.
Come
You know,
on, yeah.
lot of big bands. Do you know what I'm saying? Um, anyway, so Jazz basically phones us up, and we're talking to Jazz Summers, and it was really weird because, like, obviously I'd heard of Jazz because Jazz Summers had broken Wham. Do you remember Wham?
Yeah.
He broke Wham, and him and he took them out to China. He was like that was their idea to break Wham in China. So I'd obviously heard. I mean, he was just like, you know, that was a big deal. You know, no Western band had really gone to China, and they had this idea of doing this routine. So he was even at that point, sort of like, you know, mid-90s or whatever it was, early 90s. He was, you know, he's a huge legend at that point. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, so he put us in a studio with some cool producers, and I just watched and listened and learned, and I learned how to conduct myself in a studio. I was working with a guy called Paul Waller, who'd worked with like Misha Paris and Whitney. He'd done stuff with Whitney. He did stuff with kind of, you know, from Aretha. You know, he's just a huge remixer producer over here. And I was lucky enough to be in the studio with him and just watch how he worked, you know, and In fact, actually, it's really weird because obviously when you're a vocalist or, a vocalist band, whatever, as soon as you've done your bit, the producers kind of want you to leave. They want you to sort of like go so they can get on because they're the conduit between they're the conduit between the artist and the business owner. So they've got a job to do to get whatever they can get out of the artist, and then they've got to put it into a situation that they can give it to the label, and they're the go-to. So they don't want you in the studio like a band of like 20-year-olds going, turn the vocals up every 5 minutes, or can I hear more reverb on the guitars? They don't want that. So we were expected to leave the studio after we did our bit, but I just said to Paul, Paul, I promise you, man, I'll sit at the back. I won't say a word. I'll just shut up and I'll just sit and watch. And I'll make the tea. And he thought that was quite inspiring because, like, no, not most bands just want to get out and go to the pub and get drunk. Do you know what I mean? So I was a bit of a rarity. So I just sat at the back of the studio. My partner's, the guy I was making the records with, he left. He'd gone off to the pub. I didn't see him again for days. And I sat in the studio with Paul Waller and, as I say, watched, learned how they did it, how they worked the desks, how they kind of like just every second was accounted for, and they had to be because they've got a record company paying for it, you know what I'm saying? So they have to be accountable. Even, every second is they were doing something over a 17-hour period. I sat there and I did it on quite a few occasions. So I was lucky, I got into studios with some really top cats and learnt my trade, but only by listening, watching and learning. There wasn't rock and roll schools or any of that going on. There wasn't like you can go to some sort of like producer school or whatever. You just had to learn on the job, and so and then the weird thing happened that so we were in the studio again, and Jazz has gone out to America with Lisa Stansfield. She was doing her first US tour. She'd had this massive hit called Around the World, which is a big hit over here, and I think in America as well. And so they were out in America while we were in the studio, in this massive studio in North London, and we get a call from EMI, like in the studio. So the studio, we're sitting at a desk, massive SSL desk stretched from one side of the room to the other, and we're sitting there doing this supposedly doing this record for Jazz Summers and Big Life. Do you know what I mean? And we get this call from EMI, and they said, "Look, we really love this record, and we would love you to come in and have a chat." So Jazz is not there, and we didn't sign the deal. We hadn't signed the deal with them. They just put us in the studio without even signing a deal. So we're literally sort of in like, those studios were like 1,000. They've been about $15,000 something a day. Crazy money. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, so we get this call, and EMI want to see us. So we go into this. So we're like, "Oh my god, I can't believe it! EMI want to see us, man." Do you know what I mean? So we're caught between sort of the devil and the deep blue sea. So because we kind of, although we haven't signed, we're kind of almost word of mouth, kind of like contracted to Jazz. But so anyway, obviously being kind of young kids, do you know what I mean? We've gone, oh come on, we've got to go to this meeting. We'll kick ourselves if we don't. So we go into this meeting. In Bramley Road, which is over West London, near the old BBC place where the BBC used to be. And Ladbroke Grove, amazing place. So many musicians lived out in Ladbroke Grove. Loads of record companies. Virgin were at the top of Ladbroke Grove. There was loads of record companies. Virgin. I saw Meatloaf up there, man. I saw Meatloaf at the top of Ladbroke Grove. Coming out of a meeting with Richard Branson, honest to God, I swear to God, I was like, I can't believe that is Meatloaf, man. Do you know what I mean? Anyway,
did you just stop in your tracks and just?
I did. I went, I can't believe it. I think he was doing I'll do anything for love, but I won't do that. Do you know what I mean? I think that's what he was doing at the time. But anyway, long story short, so we go in for this meeting with EMI, and they're just like, "Come in, boys." Do you know what I mean? Like, do you want some champagne? Do you want this? Do you want that? Do you know what I mean? We're like, "Oh, this is nice." Do you know what I mean? Anyway, they just put some big money on the table, and they didn't want our publishing, whereas Jazz did. He wanted to sign the publishing as well as because they all want everything, don't they?
Yes, they do.
But they said, "Look, we'll sign you 3 singles, option on an album, and we won't take your publishing. And all you got to do is sign here, lad." So obviously, me and the guy I was working with at the time, do you know what I mean? Looked at each other and thought, "There's money. It's money. It's like there was 10 grand on the table sitting there in freaking notes. Do you know what I mean? Like that was the most money I'd ever seen in my life. 10 grand sitting." I think it was like 10, something like 10 grand. So we like literally signed this deal, and we walked out with like 10 grand in our hands. And me and Joey had got out, we're sitting in the car, and we're right, 5 grand each, you know what I mean? And we're like down the King's Road shopping, knocking on doors, going, come on, we want to come in and spend some money. You know what I mean? So we were just charged, but not thinking about when Jazz gets home, he's going to go frigging mad that we've signed this deal underneath his nose. And so it was just exciting period of time. Do you know what I mean? So we ended up doing, spending some time with BMI. Again, a really good opening, very, very kind of like interesting kind of period of time in terms of learning how the business worked. Had some adventures with those guys, do you know what I mean? And again, learning how the business worked, you know what I mean? Made a few records for them. It didn't really work out with EMI, if I'm honest with you, but you could bounce out of one deal and into another one. I think we got a deal with Warner's after that. Do you know what I'm saying? So the 90s was very, very kind of a good period of time to be in London. Very kind of, easy to do deals. Like you fall out of one deal into another one. Don't care. Drop me. I don't care. I'll get another deal. Do you know what I mean? Well, that's not the same case now. Do you know what I'm saying? It's a changed world. Do you know what I'm saying? But I'm very glad that I had that period of time where you could make records, man. Do you know what I'm saying? And you could get deals. I mean, as I say, there was the very DIY kind of punk ethic going at that point as well, where you put out these white labels, get a distribution deal, wait for the phone to ring, and the phone would ring. That was the crazy thing. Do you know what I mean? It was a real scene. So, as I say, very interesting period of time. Met some amazing people. Met Debbie Harry. A lot of my heroes, do you know what I'm saying, were all had a different set of heroes. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, cats that I was buying. They were kind of part of my generation, if you like, or they were obviously older, but like bands like the Specials and Madness, Elvis Costello had all made records because we were sort of Chrysalis subsidiary of EMI at the point. So I was kind of like, I was in a record company that I thought, wow, these like my heroes that I've actually bought these records, do you know what I'm saying, are on the wall. The platinum record is on the wall, you know what I'm saying? So it was, as I say, it was a really great experience. Again, got to worked with Manfred Mann,
Wow.
down the old Kent Road. Oh my God! So we were just, he was just really cool. He let us use the same Hammond that he played on, Do a Diddy. We
Wow.
played on our first record, man. Do you know what I'm saying? And
Dar.Ra.
we used to just do that. There she goes, just walking down the street singing, ooh, I did it, dum, did it, do. Look good, you look fine, look good, you look fine. And she nearly blew my mind. So every time he walked past, we'd be doing that, and he'd be like, oh, shut up, boy.
No, and I'm listening to your story, Dar.Ra, and I'm seeing turning points. I'm hearing turning points that have shaped your life. At 16, you met the DJ, and then the producer, even before you signed with EMI, was that didn't kick you out of the studio, that let you stay and listen to the process and helped educate you in the process to where you can do your own thing now. How old were you then when? Even before
22 or 20, 21, 22.
Yeah. Now
So,
that is a turning point. That is a pivot in your career, a very special time when you learn this craft. I went to school for broadcasting and
Sure.
learned how to use the equipment some of the equipment that I'm using right now, because I use Cool Edit and I'm using Adobe Audition to record the audio, but then to record the video, I had to learn something else. So without that base knowledge, you couldn't be doing what you're doing. So you have to give credit where credit is due. That producer that gave you that didn't kick you out of the studio, let you stay right there. That's an amazing treat.
No, absolutely. But you know what? You've got to be able to spot opportunities. Do you know what I'm saying? So like my partner at the time didn't see it. He just wanted to once he'd done his bit, he was gone. So he didn't have the same experience as I did. So it's really, how much do you want to learn? How much do you want it? How far are you going to go so you become good at what you do? And I've always been. I've always been like that. I mean, even with EMI, they promised a lot and delivered probably not as much as they promised. But I remember grabbing a batch of the records and actually going and servicing the radio stations myself because I remember that I said, "Oh, has anyone been over South London and given like records to, the blah 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 stations?" And they were like, "Oh, I don't know." Do you know what I mean? So I'd be on the phone going, "Have you got the record?" Do you know what I mean? So, I was pushing, always pushing to try and make those things kind of happen. And I'd get on the train and I'd go over to South London and make sure that those guys had the records. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's like how much you're going to put in. How
I've
much you're
heard
going
that
to put
story.
in.
I've heard that story so many times, Dar.Ra, where the record company will help you for that first year, and then they
Yeah.
leave you by the wayside. They'll give you that
Yeah.
that 10 grand, but how much are they making? you know,
Well, I think that's another conversation in
right,
itself. I think
right.
there's lots of different strategies that record companies do. So there's signing for tax loss. There's signing for to protect other artists that sound similar to you. So you'll get a deal because you might sound similar to something else that they've actually put big money into. So there's a lot of those little kind of things that you fall into holes that you don't realize at the time that you could. There's the reason why your record isn't getting plugged as best as the other artist that's had 50 grand put into them, or 100 grand, or 500,000, or 1 million.
Yeah, but they have to pay all that money
Yeah,
back.
you get what, do you know what I'm saying? So they're going to be behind those records more than they're going to be behind your records. So it's a hard gig, music. It's a hard thing, and I think that once, I remember when we got let go by, I think it was a year or so, 2 years later, we got let go by EMI because obviously they weren't putting enough promotion behind it, and we weren't selling enough records to stay on the label because somebody up on the 50th floor is looking at your figures going, it doesn't matter how nice you are to this, that, and the other. If you're not making those figures, you're not going to be staying about. You know what I'm saying? If you hadn't have that top 10 within that 18 months, you ain't going to hang about. But that's the next test is like, I remember sort of sitting at 23 or whatever going, oh God, like my life's over. It's like, I've just been dropped by EMI, the biggest record company in the world. What am I going to do? Do you know what I mean? And I just, I spent a lot of time just, having to go, well, am I really going to allow somebody to tell me whether or not I can make music or not? Because, I just because it hasn't worked out there, it doesn't stop me from kind of doing what I want to do. So, I just thought I'm not going to let somebody in a suit tell me whether I'm cool or not, and whether I can pick up a guitar and record another record. So, but I took my advance that they gave me because they ended up giving us another batch of money to get rid of us, which was good.
Yeah, but it's called an
And I took,
advance. You have to pay that back. It's like getting an
well,
advance
yeah,
at any 9 to 5 job. Hey, can I get a
yeah.
2 week advance? You're going to have to pay that back.
That's right. But anyway, they ended up because they kind of wanted to get us out of the deal.
Oh,
Because if they'd kept us on the deal, they would have had to have paid us probably 30 grand for the album, and they didn't want to make the album. So we put out 2 singles, and that was it. I mean, I think we did top 40 with one, Reach Out, and then the other one they just weren't getting behind. But anyway, the money that they gave us, I think they gave us another 10 grand to sort of get rid of us. So I just took that money that they gave me and I went straight back in the studio with it. I was over in Holloway Road in North London, making another record, and then I came out of that and made that record, got it mixed, got it mastered, and got a deal with Warner's on it. Do you know what I'm saying? So it wasn't ever going to stop me just because, as I say, sort of one opportunity had closed its door. You know what I mean? And so, I've been doing that ever since. Really, do you know what I'm saying? It's not really about, to be honest with you, it's not even really about the success. It's about, did you do it? Did you make it? Did you make the record that you wanted to make? You know what I mean? And it's taken me a little while to actually be able to say yes to that question. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I think that it's taken me a while to kind of, I think I've put out a lot of things that I've been, yeah, it's kind of cool. But now I think in the last few years since that Dirty Little Secrets EP that came out in 2017, 2018, I'm starting to just be able to get what I hear in my head now. Do you know what I mean? It's taken a little while, and I'm enjoying myself a lot more than I have done for a long period of time. Do you know what I mean? I'm really inspired. New Kind of Normal, when that came out, I was really proud of that record. I really worked very hard on trying to get that kind of how I wanted it, and for the first time, I was actually able to get a record out that I really kind of, I was hearing that in my head. I think a lot of the times it was frustrating because I'm hearing things in my head, you know what I mean? And not being able to actually get it to realize it. So again, frustrating, but I've got, I remember coming back from studios and going, oh, just no, it's not right. It's not right. It's not how I hear it in my head. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
not how I hear it in my head. And giving it to other engineers to mix, or giving it to other kind of dudes to work with, or whatever, and or driving forward on myself or whatever, and just I came back and I did Soul Hours in 2/8, which was my first solo record. Up until that point, I've been sort of doing sort of stuff under pseudonyms, but Soul Hours sort of came out, and yeah, I look back on it, some great songs on it, but it's not how I heard it. Do you know what I'm saying? It's not how I actually hear that record. Like, I could produce that record so much better now. Do you know what I'm saying? And I think that's the beauty of where I'm at, is like I keep feeling like I can do better than that.
Well,
Do you know what I'm saying?
you still have all the publishing from the original tracks, correct?
I do.
Yeah, and
Yeah. I mean, Kusha Deep Publishing owns all the stuff that I've done in the last 20 odd years is ours, mine rather. So yeah, I've got a good catalogue. There's a good catalogue of material that is in the bag, and I'm constantly writing new stuff. And there's another album. I mean, literally, I've got another album of
yes.
songs that I've just penned and ready to sort of get in. Rise Like the Sun is the kind of the first cornerstone of this record that's just gone down. I'm really pleased with that. Kind of moving into a bit Latin rock kind of flavour with that. And so yeah, there's lots of good stuff happening. Lots of good stuff happening. And I think that in this period of time as well, with what we've been faced with, like, it's really important for musicians and artists to be a. This is where we come into our own, because we now provide a escape for people.
Well,
You know what I'm
Dar.Ra,
saying?
you have like I was alluding to, you have the publishing. You could be like George Lucas and keep remixing and remixing and remixing your films and I mean, your music, like he did his films. And I'm noticing that you're working well with others all over this internet. You can send your tracks to somebody in another country that you've never met and have them have a go at it. Send your vocals over there and have them put a track to those vocals and make a whole different vibe, a whole nother song out of it.
Big
That's
time.
an amazing use of the internet and getting those contacts, and meeting these people, I guess, online. Did they hear the original song and say, "Hey, send me the
Well,
vocals to that. I could do something different with it."
yeah, I mean, it just comes that this is the beauty of the internet. I've just, and that's why I love it for networking with other artists and musicians. It's fantastic. So yeah, I'm constantly looking for sort of new cats to work with and send stuff out with. I've got this cat in Bulgaria mixing Rise Like the Sun at the moment. I've got Vendula, Sri Lankan producer, about to do a mix. Do you know what I mean? We had the horns on Rise Like the Sun were done by a horn player in Portugal. The drums were done by a drummer in Italy. I've worked with kind of some really cool cats from the States as well. I think the drummer on Whiskey and Honey was a US based drummer. So yeah, I'm kind of I'm really open to doing that. I think that it just makes things really, really interesting. I don't like the band thing, although Valley of Kings was the kind of the precursor to New Kind of Normal, and I kind of dipped my feet back into it, and then thought, this is why I don't like working with bands, because I don't like sort of like the same faces and the same vibe all the time. I like to change things around to get a different, like Whiskey and Honey sounds totally different to Rise Like the Sun. Rise Like the Sun sounds different to Night Stepper. They've all got their own little vibe. Do you know what I mean? Because they've got different. I mean, like New Kind of Normal's got 3 or 4 different drummers on it. I think we've got Jerry Rafferty on Night Stepper. We've got Jerry Rafferty's drummer on there. We've got as I say, some other dudes from all around the neck of the woods doing various different bits and pieces. But I just love that, and I love the space that you can open up to if you're kind of open to working with other people and getting new kind of ideas. So I'm really excited. I'm waiting for this mix to come back. Obviously, I'll do my mix and I'll go,
Yeah.
this is basically the basic kind of, this is the vibe. Now I want you to improve on it. So I will take it to my level of going, right, that's what I can get out of my studio with the kit that I've got at the moment. Now see if you can better it. And so that way we keep raising the bar. Do you know what I'm saying? And yeah, and again, comes back to the boys, the Beatles. You know what I mean? Can we make a record that matches up to anything that they did? You know what
Well,
I'm saying?
exactly what they
So
did. They went all over the world trying to get the different vibes from different people, different instruments, different flavors. And what you're going to do is, that the same thing that happened when they sent Wham over to Asia. is those people probably never heard of songs like these, music like this, and they're thirsty. The same when England, the new wave came over here, and even the first wave came over here to America, we were just blown away. We didn't know, wow, that's music could be like that. We just thought it was
Yeah,
like this. We thought it was a twang and a lot of bluesy stuff. No, that's what we had. And then here comes the UK bringing a whole nother vibe. And I guess the whole world, as the internet brings us all together, we're gonna have inspiration
yeah,
from everywhere. If you
absolutely.
listen to your SoundCloud or your YouTube or your Apple Music, whatever, or I guess what was the other? So many different places to Spotify.
Yeah,
Put
yeah,
Kusha Deep on your Spotify list. And you can hear different mixes of the same
yeah,
song and just have
exactly.
different songs. It's the same song, but just because the backing track was different. Oh, it's just so
Yeah,
amazing.
I think when the internet's used like well, it's the tool it's supposed to be, which is connecting us all up to basically create amazing things. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's when it's used wisely. Do you know what I'm saying? And yeah, it is phenomenal, and it blows me away. Particularly like you listen back to say Whiskey and Honey, and I just think, crikey, it's got different people from different parts of the world kind of playing like. Some dude from Nigeria playing the bass, some cat from the States playing the drums. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's me in the middle kind of putting it all together, writing it and recording it. And I think it was mixed out in studio in England. Do you know what I mean? So I like that. I like that thought of it's just bouncing about and coming back and sort of creating something that I couldn't have imagined when I first kind of like set out on the production. Do you know what I'm saying? So I love it, man. I love the fact that we come together. I think that, you know, America and England has a real synergy. We
Yeah.
have a vibe, and that was opened up definitely in the '60s with the fact that the Brits were listening to the blues cats and the rock and roll, the Little Richards, the Chuck Berrys, the Jerry Lee Lewis, the Elvises, and picked up on that and then created something else and brought it back, and then you guys did something and then we came back and then there was a back and forth kind of thing going on that is amazing. And I think that's hopefully we'll keep that going. Where I mean, look, there's an amazing girl called Eve Eden from Florida who's in a heavy metal band called The End of Eden, and she's doing a metal version of Whiskey and Honey.
Yes.
They're in Indiana now recording Whiskey and Honey, a proper metal. I mean, she's a Manson queen. She loves Marilyn Manson, so I'm really excited to hear what they do with it. Do you know what I mean? But so yeah, and every time you go, I mean, you see me go live on Facebook every now and then doing interviews, and we've been doing this online tour as well, sort of venues around America, which I've been doing. We did where we were down in Texas, North Carolina. I did, and there's a couple of LA gigs coming up. Also, literally from sitting here, just literally kind of going live and broadcasting to all these different. We got one in Axton, VA coming out, Mountain Valley Brewery. We got Roots venue in Georgetown in Texas coming up. We got the Pepper Mill down in California. We've got another one in Texas coming through. Where else? There's a few in Texas actually. Do you know what I mean? So Wyoming, we did. We did Nebraska. When I say we, me and my multiple personalities, it's just me and my guitar basically. But this is the vibe. This is where we're at today. I can actually tour America from this room. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
So
yeah, your
I love
music
it.
is your music is made for DJs, radios, clubs. It's not really something that you can play live. Are you? Or do you see yourself going
Oh
out and
yeah.
playing live in front of people? I mean, besides you and your guitar, you could do a solo thing, but playing. I know you've had the
Yeah.
band thing. You're kind of sour on the band thing, from what I'm hearing. But
No,
would you go
no.
out?
I mean, it's not the band thing so much. It's having fixed lineups that I'm not keen on. Do you know what I mean? I like a change. Like, of course, if there was a budget to go and tour the states with some serious dudes, of course I would do that. But it would be a tour. Do you know what I'm saying? And sure enough, look, if I was hooking up with cats that I thought, wow, there's something magical here, and we've got to do, when it's happening. And if it's happening, you hang out and you make it work, and you squeeze it until you've got that last little drop of vibe out of it, and then you move on. You do other things. You go, right, that was great, we did that, and now I'm going to go off and do something else. Do you know what I'm saying? With some other cats and try and create something else. So it's just a fixed thing that I'm not so keen on. I don't like that whole kind of like turning up and it's like, hello, you know, it gets to that point. It was like, yeah, hello, how have you been? All right, you know, it's like it goes flat. You know when it's over, when it's just flat line. You know what I mean? And the energy's not happening. So yeah, you know, if the energy's right, of course I would. Of course I'd come over and play. You know, I think it's important that we're doing that and putting faces to the music. And but it, you know, as I say, it's just got to be the right conditions with the right dudes. And I mean, I think you'd find the show would be it would be an amazing show because it's so varied in its kind of musicality that it will be a real journey. And I'm really, you know, really keen to sort of draw people in to take them on a journey. You know what I'm saying? So you're getting on board the Kusha Express, and you know, for 2 hours, you know, you're somewhere else. You know, you'd be in some, you know, and a little bit of kind of, you know, messing about, and a little bit of music, a little bit of kind of storytelling, and a little bit of this, and some backdrops, and some visuals, and just transport people with a musical vibe journey, man. You know, and you know that's a beautiful thing. But you know, obviously, while we're in sort of this weird period of time that we're in, you know, I'm broadcasting literally from here and doing the interviews, and I've done quite a lot of interviews recently.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, you know, as I say, we're lucky we've got the internet, man. It's a phenomenal piece of kit that we should use wisely. You know, use wisely to bring unity, to bring love, to bring kind of ideas of change for the better. You know, that's what it should be there for.
Yeah, I'm glad that you have the ability to do things on your own. It's hard to get three or four other people to go in a flow, which makes it even more impressive when you see bands like the Rolling Stones or the Beatles
Oh,
in their time. They had a good 10 years, to where they were
it
playing
did.
together before they broke up. But then, you have these bands, Aerosmith, and some of these bands that
Oh,
have been together forever, and it's for decades now. It's impressive to get three or four people
very.
that that will be in a place at a time consistently. It's much easier to work by yourself, is what I'm saying. But
Yeah,
if you find that group of guys or girls that you can, or a mixture of the two, that you can get
absolutely.
together and tour, if not all over the world, even in your own hometown and a little bit
Yeah,
beyond. That's impressive to begin with, but then to tour all over the world to get those schedules
yeah,
together. People want to have families. I mean, you have relationships. It's hard on a body and it's hard on a relationship to be
it
a
is.
touring rock star. So it's much easier to do it from right where you are at your
Exactly.
house, with the
Exactly.
equipment that's sitting right in front of you. I'm sure it's easier on
Exactly.
your relationship right now to be able to do
Well,
that.
it's been fun. I mean, you know, I played Rock the Lockdown. It was the first one I did. This is just as we went into lockdown, and I was in my studio, and I did a full kind of set. I'd mixed all the backing tracks from like You Kind of Normal, and I did a half an hour set, and it was the first time I'd actually done a full blown kind of show, as it were, online. And I sort of came out of that and just went, you know, I was sweating but I literally jumped in the shower, went out, poured myself a drink, sat down on my settee, played with the dog, and then kind of like, you know, jammed a bit and then went to bed. You know what I mean? And I just thought, well, if I was on the road, I wouldn't be able to do that. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I think we reached about 5,000 people in one go. So you know what I mean? So I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. So I'm quite a fan of this. I'm quite a fan of doing that. And you know, maybe I will get, once this whole lockdown thing kind of ends and we can actually get, you know, bands, you know, get back out to playing live. I think I'll probably put together a little lineup to do some online shows and have the band set up in a rehearsal suite and have the cameras in there and do a full ball kind of like live band thing. Do you know what I mean? I think that would be really something quite cool to do. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of turned me on because again, you know, I can be reaching people all around the world without even getting on a plane. So I quite like that. I like the idea. It's less carbon footprint as well. So yeah, man, it's cool. We're living in an incredible age, you know. But the only thing I'd like to see more of is more unity. You know, more unity of ideas, more bringing us together. Do you know what I'm saying? Rather than I don't like this whole separation thing that's going on at the moment. I think that it's not going to get us anywhere. We need, as a human species, to come forward and get over our differences and start kind of like working on the things that are as important as some of the things that are going down. But the main thing is about, for me, is about the longevity of the planet, and that's what we should be looking at: renewables, and how are we going to take responsibility individually for everything that we do to this planet. You know what I mean? Because we're guardians, regardless of how you see it. I mean, look, to use JFK's kind of statement, do you know what I mean? Like, ask not what the planet can do for you, but what you can do for the planet. And that's kind of, I think, is a good thing to kind of think about. What can you do for the planet rather than what it can do for you? Because I don't think people really think that hard. You know what I'm saying? About our responsibility while we're here, to what to what state we leave it to. I mean, you wouldn't want to leave your kids like a broken down old house that's fallen to pieces. You want to leave your kids something that's pristine and beautiful, and they feel proud to kind of step in the house and go, oh, look what blah 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 left. You know what I'm saying? It's a beautiful legacy to where he was at as a human being. And the same thing, if we look back at our incarnation, and we say, we tried our hardest to make sure that we handed it to the next generation in pristine condition, then we've done a good job.
Dar.Ra, you're thinking locally, and it resonates globally. We have to take care of our own front porches. If everyone swept off their own front porch, the whole world will be clean. And if that's one thing that's coming good from us being quarantined and not going out so often, the planet is all the much better for it. We're
It
noticing
is.
that our carbon footprint is lowering. In particular, the places that are most industrialized. Wow, the air is much cleaner in that area
Yeah,
where it used to be smoggy. People used to have to wear
yeah,
masks all the time because they
that's
couldn't
right.
breathe. So we could see that and maybe learn from it. Okay, we have this terrible virus that we don't have a cure for, but the byproduct of it is the planet is doing much better. And really, the planet,
Exactly.
that's just teaching us that the planet doesn't care much but us.
No,
It'll be here a lot longer than we are. That's for sure.
exactly. Exactly. We're just guests and I think that, if we realize that actually we're not that important, to be fair, human beings aren't that important. I
Yeah.
think that human beings are too full of kind of like self-importance, and they get, people get rich and they wander about thinking that there's something kind of special, but actually it's a short dance in the sunshine. And you know like you said, the world will not mourn when human beings disappear. Those trees will grow back. They will grow back. I mean, I witness it in my own garden. Trees growing. And it's a beautiful thing. I'm seeing so much more. I'm seeing kind of like kites, for instance, like the buzzards, and more birds of prey coming back. That I remember sitting sort of a month ago, sitting in the garden just staring up at the sky, and six buzzards came over, like hovering. Now, I hadn't seen six buzzards in my life before, like in that formation. So we're seeing a lot more of that, and it is a beautiful thing. I've seen, I always see deers anyway, kind of mooching about around here, but we're very lucky where we live. But that's happening more. We're seeing sort of more wildlife coming back because there's less human activity. And in Venice, for instance, there's dolphins come back into Venice. That's not happened for centuries and centuries. So you know human beings, I think, if we learn anything out of this, obviously it's how manage viruses, but also just how we balance the economy, with keeping the planets in shape. And that's what we really. I mean, that's the balance we've got to get right, and that's the tricky thing. Is because obviously everyone's scared now about the economy kind of tanking, and of course everyone, we all want a good economy that's rolling and everyone's happy and they're doing their thing. But at the same time, we have to kind of start readjusting how the economy works in conjunction with the with the planetary kind of vibe. And that's where we need to be thinking. There's a lot of things that need to be done. So renewables is a key. Going vegetarian, another key. watching your carbon footprint, driving less in terms of sort of like, can you share a car? Can you, mine sounds sort of like you're being, you're restricting stuff, but you're actually just thinking, do I really need to make that car journey, or can I use a cycle? Or, do I really need to drive into town, or can I use a bus? Or, do you know what I mean? Like, just thinking, whether those things help or not, who knows? Every little thing will help. If we're all doing something little, change will happen. Do you know what I'm saying? And if we're all thinking on the same vibe, then we got a chance. As I say, my biggest legacy would be that we left the planet behind that was actually was healthy.
Very thoughtful, Dar.Ra. Well, since the last time we talked, you came up with a song called "Stand Up for the Heroes."
I did.
What was the incarnation of that? Tell me the inspiration. Tell me about that song.
Well, again, sort of like none of us knew what we were facing in March. There was a cannonball coming down the line, and no one really knew how hard it was going to hit. And so some of us kind of like did what we were told, and we went into quarantine and we stayed out of the way of the cannonball. And some people couldn't; they had to go out and hold the fort. And those people, I felt, were so brave. The doctors, the nurses, the key workers, the people that went into the supermarkets before the screens went up, before there was masks. They were there. They were doing it, and it was uncharted territory. And I kept going out. We were going out shopping, and I kept seeing these young cats basically doing their job with a smile on their face. Serving people and making sure people had enough toilet paper. Let's not forget the toilet paper madness. You know what I mean? And I just thought, you know what? They are real. They're today's heroes. And we were doing this thing on a Thursday over here where people were going out and clapping for our healthcare people. And I just thought, you know what? Clapping is okay, but I felt we needed to do something more. So I thought, I'll write a song and maybe people can sing it. And then obviously the downloads, which was on Bandcamp, was going towards kind of like, supporting healthcare. So yeah, it was just my little bit to kind of give back, really, to say thank you.
That's great. That's great, Dar.Ra. I mean, the inspiration, and then you put it out there, and then now you're using it to help people. First you have to take care of yourself, make sure that your house is in order, and then try to take care of other people around you. That's our job. That should be our goal in life, is to help each other out. And doing these interviews with people, I find that we're more alike than different. I think there's people that are on the far right and people on the far left that are causing all the problems. Most of us right here down the middle, just trying to
Yeah,
survive and help each
I
other out.
think I think anything on the far of anything is dangerous. To be fair, I think that you know, any extreme. I think if you look at the way the Buddhists kind of talk about life, like they'll say sort of like the perfect combination is when you've got a guitar string, for instance, or a string that's perfectly tuned, a harp string, whatever. If it's too tight, it'll be sharp. If it's too loose, you won't get a note out of it. If it's just right with the right tension, it will be a perfect note. And so any of those extremes never really allow you to get the perfect note.
Oh, you just reminded me. I have to go pick up my guitar at a music shop. My grandmother, all right, gave me my my grandfather's guitar that they got in Spain back in the
Wow.
50s, maybe. But
Okay.
it's this guitar that's just been sitting, and really it was it wasn't in terrible disarray, but it was bad enough to where I took it to my local guitar shop, and Ryan Hinman, he's also been on the podcast. He's
Wow.
fixed it, and I just remembered that they're open for a short time today, so I need to get
Oh,
over there
wow.
and pick up my
You're
guitar.
going to have to go down there, Keys, and get that guitar. It's important, man.
Oh my
It's
goodness,
important.
I can't play but 3 or 4 chords, but I plan to learn something on that guitar and play it for my 91-year-old grandmother who's still out there.
Well, you know what? Buddy Holly wrote 3 chord absolute killers. So if Buddy can do it, you can do it.
And I know
You
you
know
can
what I
do
mean?
it, man. So
Well, you know what? Keys, you know what? You are a light. Let me tell you that, my friend. You are a big light. Your energy shines, my friend, you're a very beautiful soul. And I think that Arkansas is so lucky to have a man like you, just being there, being alive, breathing, and inspiring, and bringing people together with the things that you do. You're an amazing, amazing American hero, my friend.
I appreciate that. Quit buttering my bread, man. It's all about you. This is not about me.
No,
This is about you. No,
no,
when I
no,
started
no.
this podcast, it was to meet people and to talk to people and pick their brains and find out what makes them tick. And I'm finding out what Dar.Ra of Kusha Deep Music is doing these days, man. I get to have long conversations with people, not just these little sound bites that I used to get on the radio. Hey, 15 minutes. Where are you going to be?
Yeah,
Where's the show tonight? How much are the tickets? Okay, see you
yeah,
later. And that's it. That's all I'd get.
yeah,
5, 10 minutes
yeah.
on a radio station. Now I get to talk an hour. We've gone almost 2 hours, and that's a wonderful
Yeah,
thing, man.
Keith, I think that you underestimate yourself, man, because like it's your energy that creates the platform, and without you, you're giving a voice to so many people, and you do your routines as well, and you go out and you're getting people singing and dancing and doing all the rest of it, and it's a really an amazing thing that you do, that you're doing that, and you do it very selflessly. You're very modest, and I think you need to just take a bit of cred, man. That you're an amazing guy.
All right.
You really are, and as I say, Arkansas is very, very lucky to have you. Do you know what I'm saying? And I can't wait to come to Arkansas and just go and hang out with you and have a beer and
All right. Let me take a
shoot a
second.
fat.
Let me take a second to reflect on myself.
Do
Okay, that's enough.
that.
That's all I'm
Do
taking for the
that.
day. That might be for the whole year. No, and
No,
I
man,
want to
no. I tell
remind
you,
you
seriously,
there's
I really appreciate you, Keys, man. I'm telling you, you don't know how much I appreciate you, brother. I really do. Here's the deal, right?
yeah,
I've met some real cool people, man, in my life. You know what I'm saying? And Keys, I definitely think, you're in the bag, brother, with some real cool people. But the support that you give me, if I put something up on Instagram, boom, there's a like there. If I share something with you, there's a response there. Radio what? Come on, amazing! I love every time I see you've dropped one of my tracks
it's
on
right behind me.
on Twitter,
That's radio
dude.
what behind me.
Huh?
That's radio what behind me.
Radio what, baby? It's all day long. I haven't. I've got to do some IDs for you, Keys. Actually, I'm doing loads of IDs for loads of other people.
Oh,
But
cool.
yeah, every time I see that, it'll come up on my phone. Radio what are playing Rewind, or Radio what is playing the beat, the Bangor mix. You know what I mean? And I'm like, oh, Keys, you're an absolute legend. You really, it does lift my spirits. You know what I'm saying? When you sort of, you see that happening, and yeah, so I can't thank you enough, man. I really, really appreciate you, brother. I really do. As I say, if I could give you I'm going to give you a virtual hug right now, brother. Big virtual hug. You know what
Well,
I'm
I
saying?
mean
No,
that goes back
we
to
need
we need to be
the
helping
the
each other
world,
out.
man. I'm
That's
telling you, the world needs more keys. They need more keys, dude. More keys down.
and without
Because
Darras, I'd be playing nothing. It'd be
yeah,
silence. So I'd have to have
yeah.
I have to have some Daras over here so I can have some tracks to play. So thank you,
You
Dara. I
know,
appreciate it.
it's a two-way thing, man. But I say you're an amazing facilitator, and you've got a great light about you, man. A really good light. You're a very spiritual man in terms of sort of you give off a great, loving, warm energy, which is so powerful and so warming. And I'm sure that your friends and the people that surround you are inspired by you on a day-to-day basis, because you've always got a smile, man. You're the sort of cat that you'd want to be in the trenches with. Do you know what I mean? You'd be like, you'd look over at Keys and you go, yeah, man, everything's going to be okay because Keys is smiling, man.
Yeah, I think
Do you know
ignorance is
what
bliss. Maybe that's what it is. No, I've had that before where people say, "You're always smiling." I say, "Yeah, everything's gonna be fine. We'll be all right. We'll get through this." But
You know what I mean?
I'm diligent. I got my mask. I have a little bandana here that I pop over my face if I.
I thought that was your. I thought Keys. I thought, my God, he's got his underpants out. Come on,
Yes,
Keys.
I pulled my
You
underpants
mixed
out
that
just
up
for
with your
you.
mask.
No, in this time
Keys going down the road with his underpants on his head.
I might do that. I might do that, and you've inspired me, Dara. You really have. I'm gonna go.
Purple underway.
There was a time that women were wearing underpants as shirts. They would cut the holes, and I think that was a whole fashion line. And they were wearing
All right.
men's underpants, and it said
All right.
Hanes, and they would cut
All
like an
right.
extra hole for the neck. It was a fashion line for a while. Look it up. There's
Wow. I
underpants
have to.
worn as a top, a crop top, if you will. All right,
Okay.
I think we've taken enough of your Saturday. The girlfriend has walked by at numerous amounts of times, so she would like some of your time as well, Dara.
There was a few hints there. I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah, yeah, I understand. I have a
Keys, I
family
love you,
myself.
man. I love you, brother. It's been a pleasure. Hopefully, there's been some inspiration in there.
Yes.
Next time I've got to play you some songs, man. Do you know what I'm saying? We had a chance to play some songs.
See, this is not about the music. This is about the person behind it. And you did sing some doo-wah ditty. You did give me a song in there, so I got an idea of the vocals. And if anybody who is good at getting vocal tracks, I want you to take that little bit and put your backbeat to it, and then we'll see if Manfred Mann will let us use it. You know,
yeah. Well,
but
he's a lovely guy as well. He's another absolutely lovely man. Do you know what I'm saying? And legendary people, man. Do you know what I'm saying? But Keys, man, have a great day.
Well,
thank you. Thank
you
you to the listeners.
You got to give yourself promotion, though, man. You got to tell the people how to get a hold of you. That way, they can find you online.
Sure. Look, easy, man. You can just Google search me. D-A-R-R-A-G. No, sorry.
No.
D-A-R-A. Darragh. D-A-R.R-A. Darragh. Or Kusha Deep. Kushadeep. If you want to do for the books, if you want to go full spell, it's D-A-R-R-A-G-H-J Brady. Darragh J Brady. And just Google search me. You'll find me. If you want to see me on Facebook, we're going live and doing these shows on a regular basis up until sort of mid-September. So if you want to tune into some of the Facebook shows, just it's Facebook.com/Kusha Deep. And that's pretty much it. You will find me. If you want to find me, you will find me.
Yeah, I noticed that in the same room about 3 days ago, you had some inspiration in the middle of the night. You just grabbed a guitar and just started playing, and that that's good. I want you to do that often. Just grab your guitar and just start playing for the people, and make sure that your face is out there. All right, let's go ahead and finish this thing off with last words for the people. It could be words that have inspired you throughout your life, or just whatever you come up with at this moment in time. Dar.Ra, Kusha Deep Music, last words for the people.
Just be good to each other, be kind, be thoughtful, and put yourself in other people's shoes before you make a judgment.
Well, there you have it, party people. Dar.Ra, Kusha Deep Music. Can you dig it? I knew that you could. The man's got stories. The man has lived a life. And I encourage you to follow in his footsteps. Maybe not do exactly what he's done, but follow your dreams. Follow his example of going all over the world and saying yes to things. Hey, you want to do a tour of South America? Sure, why not? You want to go to the Congo and dig for treasure? Sure, let's do it. You want to go, down the street and go buy some turnips? Yeah, sure. That's an adventure. That's an experience. And whatever it takes to fill your brain with knowledge and to give you inspiration, do it. Be like Dar.Ra. Do it. He got inspired by a lot of the Indian teachings, and that's what named his record label Kusha Deep. And he found out what Kusha Deep meant. That's fantastic. You never know where you're going to find inspiration. So take advantage of those experiences. If your best bud says, hey, let's go do this thing, and maybe you hadn't thought of doing that thing, well, do that thing. If it's not too dangerous, don't hurt yourself. But certainly, if there's an experience to be had, go do it. You never know where that inspiration is going to lead you. You might write a book like Dar.Ra did, 2 of them, in fact. Make a movie where you get to be Paul McCartney. Sure, do that. I liked his Liverpool accent too. Or make countless amounts of songs, inspire you to make music, for the people, and not just make it yourself, but also send it all over the world to different producers and DJs and people that'll edit and re-edit and remix and make totally different vibes of the same song. Yeah, these are things we could do with the internet. It's not just about talking down to people and venting and ranting. No, they could do. The internet can be used for good. Yes, it can. Dar.Ra's using it for good. Yes, he's bringing people together, finding souls all over the world that will help him create, and they're inspired by his creation, and he's inspired by their creation. Yeah, we inspire each other. See how that works? Ebbs and flows. All right, that's it for this edition of What Makes You Famous. Thank you so much, Dar.Ra, for being on the show. Kusha Deep Music. I encourage you to look it up everywhere. Yeah, find the links in the show notes. They're out there. Also, if you'd like to tell your story or hear the stories of others, yeah, I'm talking to you. I encourage you to give me a call at 501-470-6386 or email info@radiowhat.com. That's it for this edition of What Makes You Famous. It's Keys Dan, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com. Peace. I'm out of here.